But we move on to Old Dominion, coming over from Conference USA that they joined in 2012. And they've had a lot of change around the Old Dominion athletic department in the last couple of years. They added volleyball for the 2020 season. They announced it back in 2017, had a couple of years to get it going, but officially started playing in 2020. They discontinued wrestling in April of 2020, and it wasn't technically because of the pandemic, but it was pandemic aided, I think you could say. But before we get into basketballs, baseballs, the other sports, this football program is something that fascinates me. I don't know why, but I went down a rabbit hole today, and you know how dangerous that can get.
Well, there's a lot of tie-ins between the two, the way that they begin.
Right. They played 1 year as an independent as they transitioned to FBS in 2013, became full Conference USA in 2014. They tried to resurrect the program a couple of different times over the years after they stopped football in 1941.
Ironic.
Right. So, a relatively young program. They restarted it back in 2009, first 2 years as an unaffiliated team, quote-unquote, as Bobby Wilder restarted the program. They joined the Colonial in 2011. They played 2 years as an FCS school. The 2 years they played them, or the 2 years that they played as an FCS, Georgia Southern ended their season in the playoffs. 2011, they defeated Norfolk State 35-18 in the first round when they were ranked number 10, and then they took on the number 3 Georgia Southern team, lost 55-48. Georgia Southern beat Old Dominion.
Quarterback by the name of Taylor Heineke.
Right.
You may remember.
Yep. 2012 comes around. The first round, they play Coastal Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a whole lot of defense that day. 63-35, the final score. Norfolk State just obliterates Coastal Carolina. Move on. Who do they play in the second round? Georgia Southern. This is the year that Ryan Chambers loves to talk about.
2012.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because ODU was number 3 in the rankings. Georgia Southern was number 6. And I think this is the story that Chambers says that they asked them to leave their credentials on the table after the game because they would need them the next week. And I didn't know it until we had Chambers on a couple months ago now. But this is also when they had put Georgia State radio on the credentials. I didn't realize that until he told us. Mm-hmm. But Georgia Southern took care of ODU 49-35, and I think Chambers still has that credential. So both years that ODU was a part of the FCS days, Georgia Southern ended their season in the playoffs.
That 2012 game, Georgia Southern was down 14 going into the fourth quarter. They scored 28 points. Jarek McKinnon had 3 touchdowns. They had a fourth down stop, forced a turnover. It's kind of known in Norfolk as the collapse because they really felt that was going to be the year that they won the national championship, that being 2012. Georgia Southern ends up going up to the Fargo Dome and falling just short and getting back to the FCS national championship. But just like with James Madison, there is history, but it's a lot more recent history.
Yeah.
Bobby Wilder stepping aside a couple of years ago. Ricky Ronnie is the head coach now. He was the OC for James Franklin at Penn State. They didn't start last year very well. They were 1-6, but then they won their last 5 to get to bowl eligibility. They've made some renovations. They've sunk some money into Ballard Stadium, so it no longer looks like the side of a ship behind one of the end zones. But still, that's one of the more challenging places to go to because it's relatively compact. And it's not in terms of having a ton of people, but they pack them in pretty tightly.
Really? Sunk a lot of money into it so it doesn't look like a ship?
Well, I was up there in 2013 for that year. That was the famed 59-58 game against the Citadel.
Oh.
I was up there that year.
Sorry.
Missed a 2-point conversion in the final seconds, lost by 1.
Yikes.
Still the craziest football game I've ever seen.
But again, Old Dominion ended up becoming FBS in 2013, transitioning in 2013, I should say. They were full Conference USA members in 2014. But this is a basketball team that I didn't realize was as prominent as they are.
Very good.
12 NCAA tournaments on the men's side, 25 NCAA tournaments on the women's side. They made it to the Sweet 16 when they lost to UConn. A lot of people can say that back in 2008 on the women's side. But men's basketball last made it to the NCAA tournament in 2019, and they are really, really good at home. The Ted Constant Convocation Center, they are 109-27 the last 6 years, and they average about 5,000 to 6,000 in home games.
And that's where I was heading, because it's not just them, but it's also Marshall at the Henderson Center. They average more than 5,000. Nobody in the conference men's basketball, and don't mean this to sound a certain way, but nobody in the conference, even the Cajun Dome, don't touch those numbers.
No.
So those two are going to come in, lead the league in attendance for sure. But Old Dominion has had a lot of basketball success on the men's side. On the women's side, 80s and 90s, they were one of the best programs in the country.
Yeah. Baseball side, they've been to 9 NCAA regional appearances. 1996, they were in the Atlantic Regional when they lost to Georgia Southern and to Clemson, who was hosting that year.
That's right.
And I didn't realize this, but Justin Verlander, an ODU alum, along with Daniel Hudson, pitched for the Nationals and for the Cardinals for a short stint, I think. But Old Dominion, rather, has 10 NCAA team national championships, all on the women's side, 1 for basketball in 1985, and then 9 titles, the most recent coming in 2000 for field hockey. So you're on a pretty good field hockey side of things here for the Sun Belt.
Nobody's going to be playing pickup field hockey with the Virginia school.
No, forget that noise.